We've seen people's lives change, to get saved, to get baptized. People's marriage has been restored. People's families have been restored.
I love the fact that the church is growing and I'm able to grow in the church.
God has moved in some really cool and unexpected ways.
The people that come in here and meeting them and talking to them, they craved a gospel-centered church that preached the gospel, that served the city, and that really was passionate about helping people in need and helping people in this community.
Coming from a bigger church, you can kind of hide in the background, but being a part of a church plant allows development personally because you have to be vulnerable, you have to get to know people, you have to be willing to do daily life and let people see the dirty.
In time, through relationship, the walls come down, the facade breaks, and the brokenness is there. And then God comes along through community and through His Holy Spirit, and He heals people.
I look back over the last couple of years, and I think the person that God has changed the most is me. He's humbled me so much. I thought this was going to be easy. It's the hardest thing we've ever done, and yet it's the most rewarding. Most people don't know this, but we really didn't have a lot of a desire to plant a church. We loved where we were. But I was at a conference, actually here in Atlanta, of all places, and I was speaking on church planting. The church we had come from did this thing where they asked people to give 2 years of their life to a church plant. So we would go around the country and we would speak on this. And I got to the point where I couldn't ask people to go do something that we weren't willing to do anymore. So honestly, that's the part where God starts to move in your heart. I remember calling Allison and telling her, I think it's time for us to go start a church. All through that time, we started thinking, where would we go?
So church planting has been a part of our DNA since we've been married. And so when we moved to Alpharetta, we just started landing on, you know what? We really want God to bring a church to our backyard and a church planter.
It's like 7 years later of us praying together and even inviting others to pray with us for, hey, what would it look like if there was a church plant here?
Well, Dustin and another guy named Tom had met with me, and they really pitched Alpharetta, and they said that they would do it with us. Come to find out, Alpharetta was the fastest growing city in all of Georgia and among the least church cities in America. And God started stirring in our heart in such a way that it just became clear, like, we need to start a church, and we need to start a church here.
The Lowe family moved here along with some other families that moved and joined.
Those days were fun, exciting, but also no one knew what we were doing. I think we were just all trying to figure it out. I remember before we moved here, we would Skype in because we hadn't gotten jobs here yet. So Emily and I would Skype in to the core team meetings, and we would watch the worship via video and hear all the planning details. And I just remember sitting there watching. We were very excited and anxious to get here.
So I started meeting with people, and we started gathering this core team, and God started moving. It was really cool to watch people be hungry for something that didn't exist, but that was going to. And we learned a lot of things, like there's only two types of people that come to church plants. Those who really want to see God move and those who have nowhere else to go. Both of those people showed up, and God used both of them in mighty, mighty ways.
That first Sunday was full of emotions. We were setting up, we got there really early. None of us really knew how to set up or tear down, but we went in there faithfully, and we were expecting God to move. And it was awesome. People showed up that we never thought would show up, and people's lives got changed, and it was really cool to see everyone working together for one goal, and that goal was to spread the gospel and to just to be the light of Jesus that people needed in this city. So it was really cool to see.
Some of my most vivid memories were when we first launched and we were setting up and breaking down, and I was very much a part of the breakdown team in the gymnasium. Because when you plant a church, you don't have a building, you don't have a facility.
We started first in the Sana Middle School, and I cannot forget the middle school. Every day when you came in, you have to set up and tear down all the chairs and like all the equipment. It was kind of strange how like we could transform a basketball court to a church in a few minutes. So that was pretty fun.
And the method of setting up chairs and those kind of things was just a means to get to connect and be with people, and people are the church.
Starting out in a small church, in a small community, it basically meant I knew everyone. So I was connected to everyone in some way. I had conversations with different people. It basically made me feel more connected and more grounded to community.
I just think it's really cool too, like how small groups have formed. Like it's not just small group or community group, it's more like family.
During the last 4 years, we've seen a lot of people come in here that needed the gospel, that needed Jesus, that needed help, and they got those things through community, through coming into this building, through the intentionality of people that we're serving here. And we've seen lives change. Seen people get saved here in our small group, and people get baptized. And not only that, we've seen a community change. We were able to serve the community in a lot of different ways. We're serving with the coffee at Espresso's Coffee, and serving with different foster ministries. And those people's lives have been changed for the better that I've seen. And it's been really cool to make an impact here in Alpharetta, and only being a 4-year-old church plant and doing those things that we're doing.
I sit here sometimes and I look out from the stage and I see people, and I see lives change. I see joy. I see sacrifice. I see people who have believed in us when honestly we didn't deserve to be believed in. And I've seen people be gracious to us and kind to us. In the hardest moments of our lives, people have been generous to us. And really what City Church is, it's a family. It's a family that keeps growing by the grace of God. Like I look forward to 20, 30 years from now when I don't know every face in here, but by God's grace, they haven't fired me yet. And they allow me to keep being the pastor of this church because I want to not lead the church, I want to be a part of the church. And as we've done that, my family has benefited so much. I've always said that I wanted to start a church that my family would want to go to. And it's neat to see my kids who grow up in this environment.
I have a 13-year-old son, we have a 10-year-old daughter, and both of them in our time here at City Church, they have both come to Christ during this season of life. Very pumped about seeing our kids, they come to Christ in this church, but now seeing them discipled, not just by us, like Rainey said, but by other people within our church and within our community excites us. And to see them take on the reins of leading this church one day. I think about how God's gifted them, and maybe one day they're leading us in worship. Maybe one day they're teaching us. And so as I think about the mission of our church in the future, I see us planting churches as a church in our future. I see us sending missionaries all over the world in our future. These are things that have already happened, but I see these as things that can happen. And to just dream a little bit, to think that our own kids may be a part of those visions coming to reality is an amazing thought.
A group of people committed together to give themselves to something bigger than themselves, really to give themselves to Jesus. And what we found is people have worshiped Jesus. We found that people have fallen in love with Him, that His Word has been just primary and central to our lives. And honestly, most of the stories that I hear don't involve me, and that's a beautiful thing. They involve community, they involve small groups, they involve each other. I see online where people are going on vacations, and they're going on vacations together with people that they met at City Church, and that's really cool. As I think about City Church, it has been the greatest blessing in our life. It's been the hardest thing we've ever done, and yet I wouldn't want to ever do it any other way. I don't ever want to leave here, and I hope that I watch God do and blow our minds far more exceedingly than what we could have ever asked or imagined. So when I think about City Church, I think about something far bigger and greater than we could have ever imagined. And I'm really grateful to be along for the ride, and I can't wait to see how it continues.